They were like, we don't take undergrad interns in the legal department. You can do your internship in the documentation library department. And I said, it's not like I don't want to be a librarian. I can go to the library and read books there, but what I want is the legal experience. So I kept pushing and I didn't get a yes immediately. What happened was when I registered for the moot court competition, the lecturer at the time, who was the one teaching international law and international human rights law, did his master's at the Center for Human Rights in South Africa and was sent to teach in Gambia for 1 year. He brought people from the commission and HRDA, and they sat as judges. And so I was the best speaker at the time, and I was chosen to represent the school to go to the moot court. So now I had 3 people from the commission and 2 from HRDA whom I had access to by virtue of that competition. So the next time I went to the commission, I wasn't just going to submit a blind application. I requested to see them. And then I went to their office and said, you know what? I want to do this internship here. They're like, we don't have what, but we'll follow up for you. So guess who I'm following up with in 3 months' time? The same people. I think at some point they just got tired of me. And then I got an email telling me to come for an interview at the commission. One lady invited me and then she's like, I have 2 of my colleagues who are on my neck telling me we should get you for an internship. So I'm like, okay. She's like, we're going to offer you 6 months.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to What I Do for Work, the podcast for ambitious people who want to build the careers of their dreams. I'm Anita Patrick, and throughout this series, I'll be speaking with hardworking people in diverse careers about the work they do, what it entails, the kind of efforts, sacrifices, mentality, and everything in between it took to get them to where they are now. Today, I have Henrietta Ekefre. She's an international human rights lawyer, policy advisor, and consultant who specializes in transformative justice, gender equality, and reparations for historical injustices. And for over a decade, she has advised African human rights bodies and also shaped high-level policy dialogues and advanced strategies, that are addressing systemic inequality and past harm, especially in South Africa. And today we'll be diving into what her work entails. So welcome, Henrietta. Welcome to What I Do for Work. I am so glad to have you here. All right, okay. So let's just go into it. So tell me, what do you do for work?
Okay. First, thank you for inviting me. Really happy to be here. And thank you for putting together this platform. What do I do for work? I'm a lawyer. I do international human rights law, rule of law advising and policy for work and advocacy. Yes.
Okay. So let's break it down a little bit. Let's go into the details a little bit. Can you tell me what a typical day looks like for you? I mean, I know you've done several things, and so maybe that might be it might be hard to just encapsulate it into one day. But just think about a day that captures the bulk of what you do, and tell me what that looks like.
Up until about a month and a half ago, I was Africa reparations program lead at an organization called Africa Judges and Jurists Forum, a network of judges and lawyers that work at the intersection of rule of law, development, and human rights. And so on that program, I was organizing trainings for lawyers, not justice practitioners, sensitization meetings and summits for judges, essentially, and advising the African Union and some of its key bodies on reparatory justice for the continent. So 2025 is the year of reparations at the African Union level. That's the theme of the year. And it's reparations for historical harm, such as colonialism, transatlantic enslavement of Africans, apartheid, etc. And so what the African Union is trying to do is trying to come up with a common position for what Africa wants as reparations for those historical injustices, right? The Caribbean, the Caribbean community called CARICOM already has a 10-point agenda plan that says to the West that for colonizing and for the enslavement of Africans, they should cancel the debt of the countries, return artifacts, like, some of our bronze, the Benin bronzes are still in the UK, for instance. Some of our African artifacts are still all across the West. And so it's basically the African Union then putting together a position to advance the cause to get back some of our items and promote the rights of, Africans. And so as part of that project, I would organize meetings, trainings, summits, shape policy dialogue by pushing like white papers on different issues along those lines. A typical day for me would be, and I work remotely, so I'd only travel when there was a meeting I was organizing or a training I was organizing or a summit I was attending. A typical day for me includes waking up, getting ready for the day, doing my prayers, sit on my desk, open my laptop, do like a 30 minutes or so to just run through any emails or anything outstanding, look at my calendar for the day. I like to actually plan my calendar like on Sundays for the week ahead, but just look through, see what's there. And then if I'm organizing something, so I'd work on a concept note for the meeting I'm organizing, put together a list of speakers, send emails to them, and then then I guess make it happen. Where I have something that I am attending, I'll sit down, do my research, a couple of papers or a couple of policy documents, prepare my presentation. Yeah, and in between the days, I'll have like webinars where I'm either training youth groups on engaging in transitional justice or women-led groups or AU platforms. I'll show up for the meetings, finish, get back to my desk, do some more emailing and writing, and end of day. And that's for days when I'm not traveling. When I'm traveling, it's a lot more hectic. Typically, that's what my day looks like.
Okay, that sounds very, I know you said that it's a lot more hectic when you're traveling, but even this year that's traveling shut down, very packed and busy. Thank you for, giving us that detail. The last time we spoke, I mentioned that you've always seemed like you knew what you wanted and that I'd have been surprised if you were practicing at all. So take me back to how this came about. When did you know that you actually wanted to be a lawyer and what inspired that?
So, funny story, when I was in primary two, I knew I wanted to be a judge. I think that's when they told us like different professions and the judge with the wig and, the gravel, and I loved it. I was like, that is what I want to be. And amongst my many childhood dreams, I look back and I'm like, why did I think this way? One of my favorite was I wanted to be a judge so I could sentence people to 25 years in prison. Like you watch Nollywood and they're giving out, sentences. So I was like, I'm going to be a judge. So I'm going to sentence criminals to 25 years imprisonment. And that was like one of the early motivations. Then I grew up and so, okay, to be a judge, you have to be a lawyer. So I'm going to be a lawyer. But also some of the things that influenced me are also personal. From my childhood, my neighborhood, I went to a missionary school down the road, somewhere in Kubwa in Abuja. But beyond that, I saw some neighbors, like some of the kids who didn't go to school either because they were married early or like they were from northern Nigeria. I mean, there were issues that did not necessarily affect me personally, but I saw and I just thought this was not okay. And so I remember being a child and thinking, I'm going to grow up to advocate for children. And then I'm like, I'm going to advocate for women. And either way, it's still tied back to studying law. So I knew very early, like, this is what I wanted to do and just ran with it. So went to undergrad. One of my first icons was Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. My mom absolutely loved her. And, anything that had Iweala, I would watch on TV. So I was like, okay, I like her. I think I'm going to do trade and investment law. And my plan was make your money and then go start your foundation and advocate for women and children, like especially, street children, take kids off the street. Like that was my initial motivation. And then I started looking for my very first year, like, online when I finished my first degree, what kind of programs did I need to do? Okay, I need the masters. I started looking for those and I didn't see scholarships for international commercial law, international trade and investment, but I saw for human rights. And I knew at the time that my mom, she had single-handedly raised myself and four other siblings. She couldn't fund me to do a program after the first degree. And I saw and I said, okay, I want to make money to then go into doing this work. But why can't I build my expertise in that work already if I get the funding to do it? And that changed my strategy. So instead of going to make money to come back, I was like, let me just specialize in human rights law and then I can practice in that already. And hopefully someday I still have that foundation. But up until then, I am happy to support the foundations that already exist, the visions that already exist. And that's what I started doing. So after first year, I got the scholarship to go do this master's in South Africa, Human Rights and Democratization in Africa. I did that for a year. But before even getting there, because I was preparing myself to do that afterwards, I started volunteering for like the legal aid clinic in undergrad, going out for sensitization trips where we'll talk to chiefs. I studied in Gambia and it's male dominated, not male, like Muslim dominated. And we had like these communities headed by chiefs. And, I understood like what I learned in class about gender law was not what applied in those communities. So we'd have these sensitization meetings where we go talk to chiefs about how to encourage women in their community, women's rights issues. FGM, was a big issue, still is an issue in Gambia. And so doing the community work that I did throughout undergrad further strengthened my resolve to push on this career. And by the end of my undergrad, I got a 1-year internship at the African Union, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights based in Gambia. So doing that for 1 year and then getting on this master's, I was like pretty much locked in and have continued ever since then.
Your desire to help women and children especially. What is what made you to do your undergrad in the Gambia?
So with undergrad in Gambia, my mom was posted to do work in Gambia for about 3 years. My mom just retired. She was a secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And so she was posted to the High Commission there in Gambia and she went with the kids. So when we finished high school, that was 2010, I went to join them and they were already there and spent 4 years there and studied there. Actually, she deceived me because I thought I was going to Ghana. My dream was to go study in Ghana. And she was like, you know what, just come. And, after the holiday, you can go to Ghana. It never happened. I went to Ghana for the first time 23, like 13 years after that. Can you imagine? Anyway, so that was how I got into the University of the Gambia and studied law there. Like I knew from when I was a child that I wanted to do law. I know like it's not the same for everyone and that not everyone knows like from the get-go. But I just knew like I wanted to fight for injustice and law was the way. And so with my courses in undergrad, I took international human rights law. I took gender and the law. Because it's Gambia, I had to do some Islamic courses like Islamic family law, Islamic legal history, Islamic law of inheritance. Like there were like 4 Islamic courses. But besides that, other public international law, private international law, conflict of laws, labor, contracts, all sorts of things. During undergrad, besides the volunteering work that I did, I joined the moot court team and I represented the University of the Gambia at JESOP. It's an international law moot competition. And I represented the university as well for the African Human Rights Moot Court competition in Cape Town in 2013 as well. And when I went to this, for this competition, the people who organized the competition is the University of Pretoria Center for Human Rights. And I'd read like a lot of stuff about them. They had this master's program that I wanted to do that I had been eyeing from my first year. So I knew I was finishing school by 2014. So when I got into the mood, I was happy to go network, get more about the center. And once I finished school the next year, I applied and I got in and started the program in 2015. I mean, I remember when I did that program, I was the youngest in the class. I think I was 21 at the time. And like those people were in their 40s. People had come with 20 years experience, 15 years experience, because you had to show experience to do the program, but you could also show interest. And I'd spent a bulk of my undergrad doing volunteering in one organization or one community or one initiative or the other, and it just added up. And then going to the masters and getting like trained specifically on human rights and democratization in Africa was a game changer for my career. Because once I did that, it was 7 months in South Africa and then 4 months in Kenya. So when I went to Kenya, I did an internship with the Kenyan Human Rights Commission. I was a research associate there at the compliance division. And they organized like public inquiries on insecurity in a certain region. They had programs that were monitoring the state's obligations. So Kenya's international law and human rights obligations and how it was being implemented at the domestic level. I was doing my research at the time on the implementation of decisions from the African Commission where I'd interned before and the African Children's Committee. So there's a case that the Nubian children, their children born to Nubians who came from some part of Sudan during the colonial era. After colonialism ended, they remained in Kenya. And so the Kenyan government refused to recognize the descendants as Kenyan. But they've been there for hundreds of years already. And so they identify as Kenyans. And so these kids would either not get birth certificates, no registration, made it difficult for them to access education. And Kibera is the biggest slum in Africa, actually. So I went to Kibera. I got this Somali friend of mine from school. She gave me this jalabia wear with a head wrap because it's a Muslim community. And I was going there to talk to chiefs about the issues that were happening, interview them for my first master's dissertation. And so that on-ground experience, coupled with now having the technical know-how from doing the program, was just amazing for me. I finished that program December 2015, and I've never looked back.
Just listening to you talk about everything you've done, I am really amazed at how you've packed a lot of things into such a short time. Yeah, so I'd really like to know, how did that happen? I'm trying to think about, how you found this opportunity. Was it a matter of maybe hearing things from your network? or maybe what you call them, maybe communities, or what gave you the motivation to actually partake in these activities? Because I know that law is very demanding. I have an aspiring lawyer in my house, so I know that it's very, very, very demanding. But so how do you find time? Okay, I'm asking so many questions now. So I know that it's very
That's
demanding. Yeah,
okay.
so I'm just thinking, in your mindset, just give me an insight into your mind.
Okay, so a couple of questions in there. Let me try address different
Yes,
ones.
sorry.
No, it's okay. So in terms of how do I find the opportunities? Different ways. So I think the me of undergrad, like sometimes I'm like, I need that drive. I need that hunger back here. Because I was very clear that I wanted to do this master's after I finished. I know a lot of lawyers or law students, people want to finish undergrad and then go to law school. Because if you want to practice in Nigeria and you want to rise to become, oh, by the way, I think from second year, I didn't want to be a judge anymore. I was just like, you know what? Have a clear understanding of the system and how long it takes to become a judge and the hustle. And I was just like, maybe I'll change my mind in the future to be a judge in an international tribunal. But I don't know. I don't know. The way I thought about being a judge before evolved. I was just like, I think I'll just stay with being a lawyer and just develop my expertise, be an international law expert. And I just ran with that. So because of that change, I didn't feel the pressure to go to law school immediately after school. Because once you get called to the bar, you're now a senior in the system. It starts counting for you. I finished undergrad in 2014. If I went to law school 2014, I would have done bar one for international students. I would have been called to the bar by 2015. And some of my classmates were called to the bar in 2015. So now I'll be counting 10 years at the bar. But I didn't do that. I went to do a master's straight because I already identified what I want to focus on. And then from doing that, I only went to law school in 2019, actually, for bar one. COVID happened 2020, and then we were home for 1 year and then got called in 2021. So I'm now 4 years at the bar as opposed to, 10 years. So I'm just saying, first of all, it helped me to identify what I wanted to do. And so in that same phase in undergrad where I was identifying what my goal was and what it would take for me to get there, I saw that internships were like, it was the golden trick to get, I wouldn't say trick, but like the path to get there was going to be shorter if I did internships. In my first year, when I was doing the research about the master's programs, again, my brain worked a different way back then because like this master's was going to be 3, 4 what years, but I was already like, what am I going to do and how do I get there? And I remember I had this document and things were highlighted in red. I went to this master's program that I liked and I copied the requirements, put it on documents and highlighted the key things. And so I needed to prove experience or interest. And I'm like, if I want to do this immediately after school, I will not have the work experience, but I can show that I'm interested by engaging in XYZ things. So there was a debating club. I mean, back in high school, I was already a debater. So I'm just like, yes, I'm joining the debate, joining the moot court, the paralegal team, and that helped me then go to the communities and now worked as a part of volunteering experience for me. And then for internships, I didn't see any open calls for internships actually when I was in undergrad. And Gambia is such a small place, like at that time, under 2 million population. And I mean, there was a human rights society, but it wasn't as thriving, I would say, because like the system was stifled, right? So in my opinion back then, there were very few places I could go to. So I knew I wanted international law. And there was this African Union body, the first one on the continent for human rights, and it was situated in Gambia. I'm like, you know what? That's my first target. Then there was IHRDA, Institute for Human Rights and Development in Africa. They have a lot of cases at the African Commission, an African Children's Committee. And I'm like, you know what? That's my second target. And there was one other one, African Center for Human Rights and Democracy, is also in Gambia. So I had 3 targets and I wrote to all 3 of them by my 3rd year. Because in my 3rd year, first semester, I did international human rights law. So now I'm like, I have the grounding. When I get into institutions, when they're talking normative frameworks, I can relate. And I applied. I remember IHRD invited me for an interview and then offered me 2 months paid internship. While the commission said to me at the time, they only got interns who had a master's and who were funded by partners. So you get like, I think $1,000 per month as an intern funded by an external partner. But because I was an undergrad, I didn't have a first degree. There was nobody funding me. They were like, we don't take undergrad interns in the legal department. You can do your internship in the documentation library department. And I said, it's not like, I don't want to be a librarian. I can go to the library and read books there, but what I want is the legal experience. So I kept pushing and I didn't get a yes immediately. What happened was when I registered for the moot court competition, But the lecturer at the time, who was the one teaching international law and international human rights law, did his master's at the Center for Human Rights in South Africa and was sent to teach in Gambia for 1 year. So Gambia is a small country, small university, and they have all this aid with lecturers coming from Canada, the UK, South Africa to come teach there, even Nigeria. And that was also good because with those lecturers came the knowledge of opportunities. I had a lecturer who studied in Harvard and we shared like courses and things that we could take. She supported us to go to the moot court competition. You know, the first time I learned about plagiarism was a lecturer who came from, was it Canada or the UK? And she had the software that he would scan your work and she's like, nope, you have to do this again because this is heavily plagiarized, you know? So the lecturers also was an avenue to hear about opportunities. So this particular lecturer was the one organizing the moot court competition. He brought people from the commission and IHRDA, and they sat as judges. And so I was the best speaker at the time, and I was chosen to represent the school to go to the moot court. So now I had 3 people from the commission and 2 from IHRDA whom I had access to by virtue of that competition. So the next time I went to the commission, I wasn't just going to submit a blind application. I requested to see them. And then I went to their office and said, you know what? I want to do this internship here. They're like, we don't have what, but we'll follow up for you. So guess who I'm following up with in 3 months' time? The same people. I think at some point they just got tired of me. And then I got an email telling me to come for an interview at the commission. One lady, she's still there actually. She invited me and then she's like, you know, I have 2 of my colleagues who are on my neck telling me we should get you in for an internship. So I'm like, okay. She's like, we're going to offer you 6 months. We had a whole interview. And then after a while, like it was the next year, now I was in my final year, they offered me a 6 month internship unpaid. And at the time, the people from HRD offered me 2 months paid. And I was just like, this one is from the African Union. Let me take the 6 months unpaid. And the 6 months unpaid became 11 months unpaid. But guess what? When I was applying for the master's and I needed 2 referees, I asked the head of the African Commission. And then I asked the lecturer who had organized the moot court. He was then acting dean of the law school. He was my second referee. And I got that fully funded master's in South Africa, the HRDA one back in 2015. It ultimately added up. So in that instance, there wasn't the opportunity, but I sought it and essentially by God's grace, because I had no power, essentially sought it and I guess in a way created the opportunity for myself. And I became the first undergrad intern in the legal division at the African Commission with no degree and no support. Thank you. And guess what? I finished that, went to the Center for Human Rights for the Masters, and someone else from the University of the Gambia, same path. Another guy, Baiki, went through the same system. After he finished undergrad, he did an internship there, came to the center. After him, someone else went through the same path. So essentially, after I left, they opened up the legal department to take interns from the University of the Gambia Faculty of Law without external support. And I look back and I'm just like, okay. That
You're a
inspires me.
pioneer.
No, it like inspires me to just, and even where there isn't a clear path, you can make the path, you know? But it took like perseverance and over a year of pushing for that to happen. But ultimately, it paid off for more than myself. Other instances where I've interned, so when I did the master's program, it was ingrained in the program that when you do your second semester in a different university or a different country, you would find an organization there to intern. In fact, the school will find you options. And one of the options was Amnesty International. I'd gone there. But I think whatever was happening at the time, they didn't call us to come. They said they had restructuring or something, so they couldn't take interns from that institution at the time. And ultimately, we landed on the Human Rights Commission. I think the coordinator of the program from Kenya found us that slot because the initial 2 options didn't pull through. And so I found myself in the Human Rights Institution for about 3 or 4 months. And I had to report. At the end of it, it formed a part of my score for the master's. So when I didn't have a choice, they found that for me. And then fast forward, the next time I but the next time I was in a volunteering kind of situation, after my master's, I went back to the center. I worked there for about 6 years. I worked as an research associate for about 18 months. And then I co-managed a unit on litigation and implementation with file cases to the African Commission, African Court, African Children's Committee, because I love using the law as a lens to do all the work I do. Not everything I do is type A lawyer work, because some of it is advocacy, policy. And for some of those, you don't necessarily need a law degree to do, right? So I've been in the embryo space, but for cases, and just using the law as a lens to interface with the regional human rights bodies that has been, instrumental, like having the law degree. So I was co-managing the litigation implementation unit at this time at the center. And then at some point I woke up and I told myself, if I go back to Nigeria now, people call me paralegal or legal scholar. They don't recognize me as a lawyer. That's what all the legal work I had done. And I'd seen some jobs where they said one of the requirements was being called to the bar in one of the member states of the African Union. And I was like, where else would I get called to the bar than Nigeria, like within the continent, right? So I said, let me go home. 2019, ending of 2019, I was like, let me go home and by 2020, I'll be done. Joke's on me because COVID happened. And what should have been like a 9 month, 1 year journey became like a 2 year journey. So 2021, I was called. I went back to South Africa and then joined the center, but in a different capacity. I went to the women's rights unit because, like, at the core, my journey started with women and children's rights. At the African Commission, I was supporting the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Women in Africa. I supported the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression and Access to Information. And towards the end of my fellowship, I was moved to support the Working Group on Extractive Industries. So I had three thematic focuses I had worked on. Then when I joined the center, I was then doing research on litigation implementation and then heading that unit at some point. Came back, got called to bar, and I just got drawn to go back to women's rights. So when I went back to women's rights, I went to become a project officer in the women's rights unit. And I was working on the Age with Rights campaign. I was managing the program on older women specifically for Southern Africa. Then I finished that and I came back home briefly. I got an email from my former boss recommending me for a new fellowship that the Clooney Foundation had started. So Amal Clooney, Judge Clooney, they have the Clooney Foundation for Justice, and they started this fellowship called Waging for Women. And they were going to send 10 African women, female lawyers, to 10 institutions on the continent. 5 were like pro-litigation, and the other 5 were like focused on legal aid, going to communities, talking to people, women in communities, that kind of work. And so she was like, I think you'd be a good fit for this because you have the litigation experience from the litigation unit, and then you have women's rights or focus experience. This fellowship is a mix of that too. I was like, okay, that's interesting. And it said like early career, less than 5 years or something, but I have more than 5 years already at the time. And it then became a question of post-call, because remember, I was only called to the bar in 2021, and this fellowship was advertised in 2023. So I was like, okay, I'm post-call, I'm 2 years at the bar. Let's see. So I applied for that. Just like, okay. And then they called me for an interview and said they were offering me a slot in Ghana. Like this same Ghana that I did not go to those years ago. I was like, okay, Ghana, here we come. And at the time, at the center, I was doing a lot of work with research, policy, advocacy, training. Would go to different countries and invite national human rights institutions, people from the ministries, to talk to them about how they should be implementing decisions from the African Union human rights bodies or from the UN mechanisms, how like Ministry of Justice should interface with Ministry of Finance to implement decisions. TSO actors. So it was a lot of like capacity building, training, research type of work. And I think a part of me just missed that on ground, talking to the people, experience. And this fellowship looked like it's for me. So I'm like, you know what, let's do that. So packed my bags and went to Ghana. And it was an interesting experience. So the first 7 months or so of it, we had this outreach because at some point that part of the program ended. We'd go to a community for 1 week, set up tent with like speakers. And we had like DJs to attract people to where we were. So people would literally come and come share their issues with us. We had the system where we would give a reference letter to the women. And when they have the issues they record, we get the reference number, we send them to the Legal Aid Commission because the office I was with didn't have enough lawyers to go to court. Now, because I'm called to Dubai, Nigeria, I couldn't go to court in Ghana, but I could advise. So we'll send them to the Legal Aid Commission where we had an MOU to follow up on the cases, and they use a reference number to track what had happened to those cases. We had some men come through, but the bulk of people we spoke with were women, like over 800 women over the course of 7 or 8 months. Yeah, because each week we're there for 5 days a week, not just at the market. Some of us go in like into the markets, into the streets, megaphones and all, or just like for me, because I couldn't speak local dialect, and then a paralegal to go with me to translate. Or sometimes I'll be the one sitting duty while they go out, and then others, who want to speak English with me will come through. But that was such a rich experience. Anyways, I mentioned that because that opportunity came to me from my previous boss, referred me to it. So yes, like your network in this space, your network means a lot. the network means a lot because you could just be sitting and you get an email or get a call or someone says something you haven't seen. But like I said in the past, I had to literally push for the opportunities, fight the opportunities. But at some point, it became that there are people who then send me stuff and say, "Hey, I think you'd be good for this. Why not give it a shot? Hey, I think you should try out for this." And while I was doing that fellowship, a friend of mine called me from Tanzania, and she's like, "Hey, this organization is looking for a legal advisor in West Africa to do some work. Are you interested? I think you'd be a good fit." I'm like, "Okay, sure. I mean, this is a fellowship, but I'm looking for a proper job." And so she's like, "Yeah, send your CV." I send my CV. Next thing I see, there's an email inviting me to do a written test, like in a week or something. I get the written test. Next thing I get an interview, I get the job. After I got the job, where I was managing the reparations program after the fellowship that I did. Um, yeah, so it's a journey.
I'm listening to your story and I'm just thinking that is really, really amazing. Several times I sit having a vision, knowing what you wanted and looking for the requirements. I'm trying to understand the path that will get you there and then reverse engineering that path. So it was not
Yeah.
like you just, I guess it was not random, And so I think that that makes a good point because not everybody always has that kind of vision for what you're going to do. That now, for people who have the vision, it makes sense to be like, okay, this is what I want to do. Now, what is going to get me there? So I can start working towards that thing. So I really
Absolutely.
like that. I especially like that story of you trying to get that internship, going back and really pushing. Because I had an interview with the previous guest too, where we talked about how sometimes with opportunities, you don't always have to take things as they are. If you want something
Yeah.
really badly, you have to give your best. You have to show that you really want it. Yeah, not all doors, not all closed doors are locked. Sometimes you just have to open it
Absolutely.
yourself. It's not always easy. It can be really hard when you're getting those kind of, or when you're getting those negative feedback and everything. But if you really know what you want, then you need to really go after it. So I'm just listening to that, and honestly, I'm inspired. Really, I'm very inspired. And then you blaze the trail for other people because you mentioned that
Yeah.
someone else actually got that
Yeah.
internship while being an
Yeah.
undergrad. So it's just really so inspiring hearing how you've approached your career journey. Like I could listen to you go on and on.
Oh, thank you.
I think that this also sort of speaks to your your character and the kind and the nature of your work because your work requires advocacy, requires, pushing for change, no matter how many negative responses you get. And so it
Yeah.
feels like it's just part and parcel of your nature and it feels like you're just perfect for the work that you're doing. And
Oh,
so
thank
now
you.
I want to sort of speak to that. What sort of people work best in human rights, international human rights law? Because I know that when people are studying law, they might have confusion about, what to specialize in. And for you, you always knew what you wanted to do. I mean, at least for at least you had an inkling, of the sort of work
Yeah.
that you wanted to do. So now, but for some, like, I'm thinking about someone who might be good for human rights, might not
Yeah.
be sure, might not have the confidence to pursue. So I want you to think about what this work entails, set of
Mm,
skills, predispositions, the kind of person you need to be to
mm,
pursue human rights law. And I want you to speak to someone like that and say, okay, so if you're this sort of person, if you have a tendency to do this and that, you will be grateful
right.
international human rights law.
Okay, great. No, thank you for that. I just had a session. I told you I was in a meeting earlier. A young woman, I think she just finished her undergrad a couple of years ago. She was trying to navigate her path. So I was like, you know what, let's have this call on Friday because like I have this other call so I can key in the two back to back. And I remember speaking with her and saying, I mean, I've also been blessed with people who've gone ahead of me, whom I speak to as well and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. I'm not sure about how to. Yes, I have a vision of what I want to do and the kind of impact I want to have, but I haven't always known exactly how to get there. Right. And so my journey has also just been evolving. And like I said, I was in my bed one day, it was actually 6 a.m. A friend called me from Tanzania and said, they're looking for legal advice in West Africa. You're fit for this, send me a CV. I'm just like, it's 6 a.m. But for her, it was 9 a.m. And she was like, send me your CV, it's important, you know? So did I know that I was going to do that job that I did immediately after? No, right? So I'm just putting out there like, yes, you might have a vision, but you may not know exactly the steps to get there. And it's okay. You just take one step in front of the other very dear friend of mine whom I also look up to tells me grace is enough for a day. And you just need that grace for each day and do what you can for that day, and everything would add up. You only connect the dots looking backwards and not forward. Like right now, you may not know, how is everything going to add up? But when you look back, you're like, okay, I spoke to chiefs there. I spoke to this community in 2012, and in 2023, I'm in a village somewhere talking to women in the market, and I needed that skill to get me to where I am now. I want to respond to it in two ways. On the one hand, creating a vision, and on the other hand, personality traits you need. For the vision, like I was telling the young woman I said I spoke with, I said to her, it's something I'm trying to do now because I'm now out of the last employment I was in. I took a break. I took a break between last month and this month. I'm like, I need a break to just recalibrate. I have like research papers and things I have not done, things that I need to get back to for myself. And then I'll be happy to get back into work, in the last quarter because I've had such easy, busy year. Reparations being the theme of the year. There has been no month I have not traveled more than once, and I just needed to recalibrate and find that balance. So I'm actively now in the course where I'm also mapping what the next steps and the future looks like for me. What I've done is I have this Notion page that I'm creating, and I'm putting there, what do I want to do next? So in order to identify where I want to go next, I'm thinking, what kind of actor do I want to be? In what space do I want, what kind of contributions do I want to make? There are some other questions, right? So within the human rights space, you can be, say, a policy advisor, and that's different from being an advocate. So you can be doing advocacy work where you're pushing for change on a particular issue. Let's take FGM, for instance. You're speaking up on FGM, you're going to the radios, you're going to the TV, you're writing op-ed pieces, or you're writing research papers. You're an advocate. That advocate can feed into advising. Now, as an advocate, you may not have access to the rooms where the policy is being made, but you're putting out the resources that helps the shaping of the policy. And as an advisor, you not just have the technical expertise, but you also have access to the rooms. So where they're drafting a national policy on FGM or something else, you actually have access to the room to make the contribution. So it's important to identify the actor you are, and that actor tells you the kind of work you need to do. And then you identify the place or the context. Are you operating at the national level? Within the national level, are you at the community level? Or are you engaging at the regional level or at the international level? And what kind of voice do you have? Are you speaking through an INGO? So if you're an INGO person, it's not your name. Your Save the Children says you are in Save the Children, and it's Save the Children that is saying you're contributing to that. If you are speaking from a domestic NGO, you have different kind of access from maybe an INGO would have. So it's important to just understand positionality, what position you're speaking from, or what your context is, what you're saying, and the kind of actor you are. And so when you're able to triangulate that, you can say, okay, my best fit, what I'm more drawn to and what I want to achieve places me best as a policy analyst, as opposed to being a specialist or as opposed to being an educator. Being interested in, say, training the next generation. For that, you're going to universities. Are you going to be a lecturer? And as a lecturer, this like your output is training the next generation and sharing this information. And that's different again from being a specialist or a technical expert who is producing the resources that goes into policy, et cetera. I'm just going to share that to just give a little bit of a practical step or clarity in terms of visioning. That scripture, which I'd love to reference, Habakkuk 2:2, write the vision, make it plain so that he that runneth might see it. I believe strongly in that. So you put the vision, but beyond putting the vision, how do you get there? You must think about practical ways to break down that vision and get very clear as you can. And whatever you're doing today, sometimes you need to have something else that you're doing that pays the bills, but you know that the vision I want is this thing. So even if you're doing incremental things, a short course here, a volunteering there, it's adding up to where you want to go. And so once you look back, you essentially connect the dots. So that's one side. Now, and I just mentioned that because the advice on the kind of person or the kind of personality that will do that job depends on you knowing the kind of job you want to do within the space because it's so broad, So I have friends. I'm more extroverted. I think, although I'm becoming quite introverted these days, on a normal day, I'm on the extroverted end of things, or ambivert. I think that's what they call it. But I have like really introverted friends in this space, like so quiet. And I find like with them, they are the most dogged in terms of research. Like they can just zone out. Like you don't see them post, you don't see them at parties or whatever. Like they are one-on-ones kind of people. But when it comes to research, they are nailing it. Like every other quarter or 2 months, like new publication alert, new publication. And this friend of mine I love speaking highly about. she's in academia. There's almost no forum you see her on. Like she's in forums, she's in meetings, and she's publishing like 2 books a year, 5 articles a year. And I'm just like, how do you do this? But for me, on the other hand, like one advice I had someone had given me like 10 years ago, but and now I'm like, oh wow, I should have taken that advice. I'm now trying to do it. It's research. Because to establish yourself as a thought leader, you need to show the thoughts. The thoughts can't be in your head. People need to be able to read the thoughts and see your contribution. And one way to do that is publication. So again, the vision. The vision is thought leadership. What you need is publications like articles, journals, books, and you need to invest time to do that. I've found that my friends who can focus and just cut out distractions are like the best when it comes to research because they just do that. I'm not saying extroverted people cannot do it. In my case, I find that I am more like, I want to get out there. You know, I am traveling for the meetings, I'm having the engagement, the stakeholders, discussions, I'm trainings, especially when I'm training like young people. I'm on this webinar with women today, this other one with youth tomorrow. There's a community meeting, I'm going there. There's a school outreach program. You know, I've now built a lot around like programmatic experience and program execution. And so by the time I finish doing all of that, I'm like, where's the time to actually sit down and start reading, to write and publish? And so now taking this 2 month break have been a game changer for me because now I can sit at home. I'm like, you know what? Last month I still traveled, but September I told myself I'm not traveling anywhere. I just want to wake up, sleep, eat, sit on my desk, read the papers and write. But not everyone needs to do it this way to get that result. So interpersonal skill is also very important. So I was just saying temperament versus how that shows up. The more extroverted of us, you want to be out there speaking, training, so you can be in the human rights space and train the capacity building workshops, etc. Or if you are more like you can close yourself off and research. But I mean, if you can balance it, still have extroverted nature and sit down and research, I guess that works. But it's important, that research makes it important to build thought leadership. It's good to have planning and organizational skills because if you're going in from a programmatic point of view, you're a project officer, you're a programs officer, a programs manager, you're doing concept notes. You're sending emails to speakers, like I was saying to you earlier, like you're organizing, sending the emails, like, you know, talking to the agents to get the flight tickets for the people coming for the meeting. At the meeting, you're maybe moderating, coordinating, it's a lot. So, and with that, you're dealing with agents, you're dealing with the hotels you're booking, and you're dealing with the technical experts who are coming to present. You're dealing with the participants who are coming to listen and engage. That's a lot of people relationship or like interpersonal skills needed. So for the more like quiet, don't want to talk to people kind of people, I find that they might struggle a bit with that aspect that is very like outward facing with engaging with people, as opposed to just coming as an expert to deliver your stuff and you go. You see, as an expert, you come, you say what you need to say. Maybe there are a few questions, the answer, you leave. But if you're the person who's organizing, you cannot do that because everybody is calling you. I organized a litigation reparatory justice surgery in July in South Africa. We had about 50 international participants and there were 8 countries, people fleeing from 8 countries. On my bed 2 days before at 4 a.m., someone is calling me. Like, I'm at the airport. I'm like, I put you in touch with the agent. There is someone with your name there. Just walk to the zone and you see your name. But they're calling me first, even though they have access to all these people, because I've been the one that they were interfacing with for coming to the meeting. Something happens at the hotel. I'm like, guys, it shouldn't be. But I mean, that's the hectic period when you're organizing something. And after that, everything is done. Then there's the part of it that goes into like the report writing. So it's good when you have a team. Some people are doing the reports. Some people are doing the pre-planning for the meeting. Some are heavily involved at the meeting. And then after that, you still have to do the reports for the organization, for the donors, OPED pieces, etc. So I think it's just a broad range of skills. People is important. Coordinating and planning is important. Research is important. Writing is important. Empathy and listening, that is super important. Because when you're dealing with communities, I grieved, especially communities that have gone through hurt. And for some of the issues that I work on in terms of reparations, it's very deep issues. For instance, with the reparatory justice surgery, we had people who came from Namibia. And for them, they experienced genocide about 100 years ago. Some of their ancestors, a lot of the ancestors were killed. Some of the skulls are still there on Shark Island. Others, the skulls have been taken to Germany and they're fighting to get the skulls back and fighting the government because the government went into a development deal with Germany without consulting the people. So when you're talking to people from that kind of community, like they're talking about generational trauma, you cannot just talk law and talk. You have to be able to connect in a way that humanizes their issue, and it's not like the conversation is not extractive. They're just layers that you have to be more intentional in a different way. And so empathy is important, listening is important. And some of the things I've learned from this work, especially when it comes to dealing with communities, is that, man, learned experience is different from lived experience. So I can talk on my learned experience with my degrees, and that's different from someone who has lived the issue. And I find that they have even more to say in the room. We just have the words, the technical words to frame the issue, but they have like the strategy on mobilizing. They have been mobilizing at the community level. They've been mobilizing for decades. Imagine this issue was 100 years ago and it's still very active today because generation after generation, they're passing down that advocacy, right? So, and with this, I've just shared like different ways, whether you're in the classroom, whether you're at an AU, UN policy dialogue, or at a community level, there are different kinds of skills you need across. But I'll say anyone can work in this space. You just have to identify which one suits you best.
You've mentioned a lot of things that people can take away, or if they are interested in pursuing this career. And you've mentioned a lot of technical skill, and it helps to really paint this picture of what this work entails. And I like that distinction you made earlier on, when you said it was important for people to know what kind of work they expect to do, since it's very broad, and that helps to narrow down what you might eventually end up doing. So I see that you have several postgrad degrees. Was there any reason for that? Was it a prerequisite for something else that you had set your eyes on?
My first postgrad was in 2015, the one from the University of Pretoria. It's a master's in human rights and democratization in Africa. That's the one I got immediately after undergrad. I had my eye on that for like 4 years prior, and that was really good because if you're doing human rights on the continent, that's like the number one program to do in Africa. It's a part of a network of 6 or 7 other masters across the world. So there's a European version, there's a version in South America, in North America. And then I did the one that's in Africa. And that formed the basis for my career, in initial days of my career. Went on to work with the center, et cetera, et cetera. But, so it's human rights and democratization in Africa. We've thought about the other systems, the European Inter-American system, the UN system, but the focus is Africa, which is great. Remember, my focus had always been, I wanted to be an international lawyer. That international emphasis. And I wanted to work across different contexts. I appreciate the rich African experience that I bring. I've worked in about 5 different African countries, from Ghana, Nigeria, Gambia, Kenya, South Africa. Right. So I bring all of that wealth of experience. But at some point I was just thinking like it would be good to be able to bridge the international. So I'm leveraging on the experience I have of the continent and then able to walk across different continents. So I'm not just an African champion, essentially. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just wanted an international, I just had an international vision. And so I was thinking, which international law program can I do? And to be honest, I think at some point I was just lazy. I wanted an international program. I wanted international aspects, but I was just like, I don't want to go and do international intellectual property, like something so far away and start again. I wanted to build on what I already had. So I applied for the master's at Oxford. It's international human rights law, and it's fit for people who are working full-time because it's a part-time program for 2 years. You do 1 year at home, you go there for 5 or 6 weeks physically, you go the second year at home, still working remotely, and then go again for 4 or 5 weeks and you go back to graduate. So that works for me because I was working during the period I did the Oxford program. And then, but what happened was I think end of 2021 into 2022, I was already thinking next steps. I worked about, at that time, 5 years or so with the center. I'd gone to Nigeria for law school back and forth with COVID and everything, gotten called to the bar. And I was thinking, what's my next move? So I said, I'm going to go to women's rights. I went back to the Center for Women's Rights and I wanted to build on my skills. Because at that time, the master's was 6 years or so ago, right? So I applied for 2 programs. I applied for the International Human Rights Law program at the University of Oxford, and I applied for the Masters of Law. So that one is an MSc, Master of Science. Then the Master of Law program at Loyola University, Chicago. It's in the US, but they have the campus in Rome, the John Felix Center in Rome. And the Master's is in Rule of Law for Development. So a lot of the work I do, like I have a human rights frame or lens through which I see and analyze things. But I understand that human rights is difficult to explain on the street without development. It's difficult to communicate very just theoretically the right to education or the right to water, like just communicate from a rights language. Because what I think people understand on the ground level is the real impact, seeing that translation from norms to realities, in that translation of implementation of human rights. And the implementation lens is development. That's my understanding. From a development point of view, you go into a community and you say, we have a project to eradicate illiteracy. For 500,000 children are out of school. In Nigeria, apparently the stats from a few years ago was saying 10.5 million children out of school by UNICEF. I think that might be more now. From a development perspective, you say you want to eradicate illiteracy. From a human rights perspective, you say you want to promote the right to education. And so I feel like human rights and development are intricately linked, but what people want to see is being able to enjoy these basic amenities beyond understanding that it is framed as a right. And so I was thinking a lot about that linkages. And that's why the Loyola program appealed to me. And so beyond international law, I think I'd also like to work in international development. So I applied for that program and was going to use the rule of law lens to view development, and I got in. And they offered me, I think, 85% scholarship. And I was just like, nah, I want 100%. And they said, okay, they're going to offer me 95% scholarship. So I started the program. I was going to do it remotely. And I think for 4 months, go to Rome. It was going to be fully funded, my stay in Rome. And while doing that program, so I applied to Oxford earlier in the year and they had admitted me, but I didn't have a scholarship as of yet. So I started that other program, and along the way, Oxford got back to me and said, I also applied for Commonwealth scholarship and they offered me 100%. I was just like, Loyola, hold my bag. I shall be back. Oxford is #1 in the world and has been for the last 9 years. I was like, okay, hold my purse. And at that point, I didn't think it was going to be difficult because I thought I've done human rights. I've worked in human rights. This is now just international. I'm now specializing on the international law aspect of human rights. So I then went on to pursue Oxford. But in between that as well, I just had a lot. I had a lot going on at the time. I had a major health crisis and I'd come home for a couple of months because I needed to have a major surgery. And I was like, you know what, I'd rather just be home. My mom, my siblings, better than doing it here in SA by myself. So I said to Loyola, just pause. Let me figure out my life and things and I will revert. And then Oxford came and I was like, Lord Jesus. So I did, but Oxford was long distance. So just like Loyola, but I don't know, it felt like I could navigate it better at the time. So I continued with Oxford, did my health break for about 6 months. I was out of work, just dealing with the surgery and healing and all of that. And by the time that was done, I needed to go to Oxford for because I said, you'd go, come back. Did my residential, came back, and then got the opportunity to go to Ghana. So all of this was happening at the same point in my life. Sometimes I look back between 2022 and 2024 into 2025, and I don't know how I did it. So I got Oxford, graduated with a merit from that this year, actually on the 1st of March, but the degree came out as of October last year. So last October, Loyola kept writing to me because they said to me, you can defer for a year, but now it's been 2 years because Oxford was 2 years and they're like, you have to finish. And I think my professor was so kind. He really pushed for me. At the time when I paused at first, I tried to do the second semester at some point. And so I just had one thing left to go and I'd gotten like 9 A's and just 1 B. So he kept writing to me like, you can't let this degree go. You just have, no, thank you. You just have the one, you just have the one thing to do. But I was like, y'all said I could only do this within 2 years and 2 years has passed. And he's like, I will defend you at the committee. Because he had known about the surgery and said, you know what? Yes, it takes time. Maybe it took over a year for you to recover. That's fine. I was like, okay. And that was it. So I got an email to come push on the program and they gave me till December. Now I finished the Oxford. It came out on the 1st of October, right? So I literally had between 2 months to do my capstone project. And I was like, okay, I did it, submitted it in December. And by 10th of May this year, I graduated with that degree. And yeah, magna cum laude and all, but yeah.
Well done.
Thank
you
you so
are a rock
much.
star, really. And also about the health issues. I hope are you good? Are you good now?
No, I'm good now.
When I saw and I saw those degrees, I was like, wow, you're really like school.
I do. Back in the day, people were like, oh, you're a bookworm. I'm like, no, what do you mean? I embrace it. I have embraced it fully. I love book. I like
I
school. I
mean,
like
it's not bad. It's not bad. I really do enjoy school. I still think about doing a PhD sometime in the future. Don't not yet. It's quite a commitment, but I really, really love learning and everything. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad you did all of that. I'm glad you did that and that you got the opportunity, you got the scholarships and everything. Really, I feel like you should cut soap for me or something because you're telling me you want 100% scholarship. They didn't give it to you, but then you're like, no, this. And I'm like, oh yes, I'm tapping into
oh,
that
I didn't even
because
finish. I didn't even finish that because they offered me 85%, and I told them I wanted 100, and then they said no, they would give me 9. They reviewed it and gave me 95, so I accepted. So I got 95 for
that's really good.
UMA,
That's really
100 for
good.
Oxford, and 100 for Pretoria when I did Pretoria back then. And yeah, because I'm like, I'm contributing to society. I'm not just society, I'm contributing to the body of knowledge. Because this work that I'm going to write, this thesis, it's in the name of your school. When I publish something and I reference the school, you get the credit. Like a lot of academic institutions have a system where when you reference, like you're either a student or a researcher with the institution, the National Research Council pays them a sum of money to go to the research bus for that publication. I don't know if it happens in Nigeria, but in South Africa it does. So I'm like, I'm going to be contributing something to your pocket. So please, the least you can do
So
is
you
support.
have
Anyways,
okay.
that's a joke, but joking, but not joking. But the
Yeah,
development.
no, I understand you. Do you have any tips for people who are looking to apply? Maybe anything they should emphasize or how to approach application for all this program and perhaps even getting funding?
Yeah, so interesting, with the first one, I already knew that they had scholarships for about 25 out of 30 students they were going to admit. So the likelihood to get a scholarship was very high with that one, the one in Pretoria. And they still have that program running every year. So for anyone who's interested in human rights on the continent, that's a good program to check, and I'd highly recommend it. In terms of the application, I mean, I feel like back then it was easier for me to make the case that, I mean, like I said, I was raised by my mom, single-handedly raising 5 young adults, for which I'm the first. So of course she couldn't afford to pay for me past, first degree. And so my financial need was very clear, and I was fresh out of undergrad. So I wrote my financial statements showing my interest, my passion to do this work, and the lack of availability of resources to fund me to do it. And it was very straightforward. They had this thing with the DAD. It's a German academic exchange called DAD. They have some scholarship across different universities across the world, a lot in Africa. And so DAD gave scholarship for, let's say, 10 students. The center had to pick which 10. So once you got an admission with the center and proved your financial need, they would nominate you for the available scholarships. That was how that came. But then with the other ones, it was a bit different. So with Oxford, I applied to Oxford, and then they told me to apply for Commonwealth, that I'm from Commonwealth nation and I should qualify for that. So that Commonwealth process was now a proper application, because you could secure your admission, as had happened to a number of my friends. You could secure the admission, but not secure the scholarship. And then you can't take up the admission because it's like thousands of pounds, tens of thousands of pounds to do that. And for this one, you had to write an impact statement. There was like 4 development impact questions you would have to answer to say to them, what I think a lot of scholarship reviewers look at is what you're going to do with the degree afterwards. Like, is this a good investment for them? If we pay for you to go to school, what do we get back out of it? Now you have to think, what is the goal of this organization? If their goal is to promote development or promote giving back to society, they can't do it themselves. So they get these graduates who are going to go get the skills to make the change and come back and make the change. So it's an investment for them. Again, win-win. You get the education, they get the boots to go on the field and do the work, right? And so you have to prove to them why you should get the scholarship, because you are going to use it afterwards. It's almost like a golden thing. Like, if you're going to apply for a scholarship, you must be showing the utility of that degree in a way that goes beyond you. Who else is going to benefit? Is your community going to benefit? And I think that's a big factor, whether for Commonwealth, for Chevening, or any of those other scholarships. Almost an element for you to say that you're going to go back home, and wherever home is, the continent, Africa, and give them this. I mean, there's a whole political argument about, no, I should not go there. Let me keep that away from the podcast. But
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
go there. But but in terms of key thing they look out for, it is how you're going to give back to the society that you come from and make the world a better place. And so once you can prove that my medical degree is I want to get I want to get a scholarship to go study pediatric surgery. And because I come from a community where we had only one hospital or 10 or whatever, but like there are not a lot of pediatric surgeons and, kids have all these issues. And because of the lack of expertise, the mortality rates for children between 0 to 5 have been at 60% or 35%. But if I get this degree and I come back, I'll be adding to a group of surgeons who's going to go to community hospitals and do these surgeries. You see, it's beyond you getting that technical expertise. It's now saying these are the people that are going to, these are the beneficiaries of your investment. And if you can make that case and then also show that I have the credibility to finish the program. Because you can fund someone who goes to the school and doesn't finish or doesn't finish well or whatever. You're like, okay, so for that aspect, you must show your academic experience so far that in previous programs you finished and you finished well. So if you fund me, rest assured I will finish the program. And beyond finishing the program, I would impact lives. I would impact XYZ communities or stakeholders. That is almost always like key ingredient to look out for. So Commonwealth, I applied directly to them and filled a series of forms for what I had done in the past, what my 5-year plan, 5-year impact assessment, what my 10-year plan was, what my goals are, how this degree is going to help me fulfill those goals, and who is going to benefit. It was like a whole series. And then the recommendation letters are so important. It's important who you ask to recommend you, because they must be able to speak truth to the work you do, the nature of your resilience, your perseverance, your character, and what you can deliver on. And so I was very intentional for each of my applications. With the first one, I chosen the head of the commission I'd worked at, and I chosen the head from school. I always try to put a mix of professional and academic. I feel like you can't go wrong. So don't be getting no family member, relative, friend. It has to be objective, for them to speak to the quality of work. I've also been on review boards where I was reviewing applications for masters, and even if you're not related, it just looks wrong if the person's surname is what, Ntokozo, and your surname is Ntokozo. I mean, on the face of it, there's an assumption that you guys are from the Ntokozo family. It doesn't matter if this Ntokozo is from Eastern Cape and you are from Victoria, like different parts of these are South African names. Yeah, you just need to make sure it looks as objective as possible and the person speaks true to the value you're going to bring to the program, to the cohort, and to your communities afterwards. And then for Loyola, when I applied to them, they had a scholarship internally. For some people, you had to prove the financial need. And I'm like, I've been working in human rights. We don't make a lot of money. At least, I mean, when you're doing like the field work and all, it's a career of passion and you're giving back to society. And I'm not in the corporates where I could be counting my money like this, you know? So when you make the case, I think for that, they had even said, bring your bank statement. That was the only application I had that said, produce your bank statements, your pay slips. So that one was extra. And so after producing all of that, they then said 85%. And I think the fees was about 48 or 40 something thousand dollars. So I'm like, after all of this, 85, I don't agree. So, but yeah, for that one, you had to show not just your financials, but also like your responsibility. So you could be earning, say, K or 4K, but then you have 4 kids, because I had classmates who were earning like proper at that time, in USD, but had like 5 kids or 6 kids or something, and the kids are in school, you have like a mortgage. I mean, so it's like you have access to resources, but you also have this responsibility and you have a dream. How do you balance it out? So different scholarship bodies look at different things, but essentially you must prove that you cannot afford to pay that fees without support. And it is going to impact your life or someone beyond your life, especially. And I'd also, for those ones, looked for people to speak to my work, like a list of referees, and choose eliminating tactic, which one would best speak to you. Because you don't want a referee that is speaking not in clear terms or speaking like they force them to write the letter. You can almost read between the lines, like, yeah, there's a way someone speaks about you and your work that works for you. And there's a way that, yeah, and there's a way that you read the letter and you have more questions than answers. So it's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that much is clear. So thank you. That's for a very detailed answer on how to approach these applications and scholarships because it's not really easy these days trying to pursue a postgrad education. So I think that would be really helpful for my listeners, well, who have their sights set on these things, not just people who are in the law space, but people in diverse fields. I have a couple of questions. I think just about 2 questions. I know that you pursue human rights, you get a lot of exposure to, stories that could impact your mental health and your emotional health. So I would like to know, how do you navigate that without,
That
I
is
guess,
such an
completely falling
important
apart?
question, Anita. That is such an important question. Like, I can't even tell you. And it's something that I'm more conscious of now. When I first started, I wasn't as conscious. And like to think of myself as an empath, that I feel emotions deeply and I take on people's emotions when I connect with them. But I've had to still having to consciously learn to show up for people without necessarily taking on the struggle. Like, identify with it, but try to keep a distance between myself and my life and the issue that I'm so passionately advocating for. Because in the past, I haven't always done it that way. There was a time when I was volunteering with, I forgot to mention this when I'm talking about volunteering. When I was working at the center between 2016 and 2021, got on this, Amnesty started a program, Digital Verification Corps. And it essentially was them going to universities. At that point, there were 4. And now I think there are 7 or 8. One in Africa, which was University of Pretoria. There was University of Hong Kong, University of Oxford, University of Berkeley, California, Berkeley, where they had students in a clinic. And what they would do for Amnesty is review online data. So a video comes up, a man is being beaten, or let's say a man is being shot at or beaten, or something gruesome happening. You see that video, and then people are then campaigning. That's how misinformation happens. So you see a video, and before you know it, someone spins a narrative on it, and the narrative goes far, and people are up in arms. It's a riot, it's chaos. So what we would do is we would take the video and review it to sort of, and now, oh God, it's been so long. I'm trying to remember the words we used back then. And we take the video and try to verify the accuracy of the video. So some things like GeoMap, I didn't even, in law, they don't teach us those things, but it was such a practical hands-on experience. We had trainings on trainings for that. And we would look into like Google Maps to try and identify, triangulate the video. So you see in the video, there's a car that passes by. Can you spot the plate number? You see there's a tree, there's a foresty look, there are some buildings here. They say this thing happened in Cameroon, in Douala, in a particular street. Maybe the video comes with that information, sometimes it doesn't. What we then do is that we try to look through satellite imagery to identify if that street is really where it happened. From satellite imagery, you can see like the field, you can see the buildings, you can identify the streets. Like, okay, in the video, I saw a shop that was, Henny's goats or Henny's cows. Now you can see, okay, Henny's cows on satellite imagery is there. And you can, okay, this video truly happened in where they said it happened. And you can then find ways to verify. Sometimes it's videos of police officers or military men beating people or shooting at people. And it's important because the government always denies. They're like, it's not us, it didn't happen. But when a video comes out and you can prove to them, you can see like maybe the batch number on the military man's office uniform, satellite imagery, and you do a reverse image search on Google to see if this image came up before that particular time. So you can verify and see like this is actually what happened. We had a series, so imagine the series of videos. You're looking at newspaper clippings, it just come out in the news that can you corroborate the evidence? Now, this is some technical, I imagine this is what journalists and technical investigators do, but these were us as lawyers and for some law students having to do this work because we then understand institutional framework. So we're then able to say like this violates the right to freedom of expression because this happened as a result of protests, or this violates the right to life. So we have the human rights lingo to back up the report we're putting together for the video that we have verified. And the ones we verified then form the basis for which Amnesty wrote a report damning the Cameroon government for extrajudicial killings. I've forgotten, this was either 2018 or 2019. The government had previously denied, and then they admitted it because the evidence was sharing and they could no longer deny it. That program actually got awarded the Webby Award back, I think, in 2019. And it was in the New York Times. It was, all over. The work that this was not just one university, it was a group of actors from different universities that contributed to doing that. Anyways, why did I mention that experience now? Watching the series of the videos and just seeing people, because I saw things. It wasn't funny. I remember we had like a session on vicarious trauma because you take on the trauma of the people you're seeing. Like imagine just watching back to back 100 videos or 50 videos. Because imagine from a protest that happens, say like NSAS, by the time NSAS happened, I was already out of this program. And if they had to review videos that came out from NSAS, for instance, where you're trying to prove that the government did it and you're saying they didn't do it, so you're going through 50 different videos, different angles to prove which battalion was released, because you need to get that detailed. And it just stays with you. You're seeing body parts and all sorts of things. So it's important we used to have those sessions to sort of breathe and try to take off beyond that, I think it's an intentional personal decision that one must make to sort of create that distance between the work and yourself, because otherwise it goes on with you. If you're constantly dealing with GBV and men who are killing women and all of that, you go back home to your partner and you're looking at him like you are a perpetrator. But he's not the perpetrator on the street, you get. So for me, at some point, I actually went into therapy. Not necessarily because of the work. I mean, maybe there was that element, but I think this was about a year ago. I finally said, you know what? I think I need to see someone. I think I need to see someone because I've seen some hard things and experienced some hard things, and I had to just be intentional about yeah. So I did that, and I did that for about a year actually. Now I'm actually at a better place where I can just we talk like once a month or on a need-to-need basis. But there was a time last year when I was on my fellowship in Ghana. There was nothing crazy happening by virtue of that fellowship, but it was just like layered stuff that I felt like, you know what, I need to actually sit with somebody and be able to define these boundaries clearer between work and life and just divorce some things that don't need to be together. And so I can show up fully as a professional and show up fully in my personal space. So it's very, very important. And one of the lessons I've taken with me.
Listening to you speak, about your experience, with amnesty, and it's actually, reminded me of 2020, in the NSAS period when I was at CNN, and during that period, lots of protests were happening, and on the back end, as a news organization, we got lots of photos, we got lots of video, and even when you are reporting, you have to verify just exactly what you mentioned. You've got to verify that this actually came from this protest. God, you don't want to be moved by emotions. You don't want a situation where someone gives you a footage that did not occur during that period, and then that discredits the work that you are doing. That whole process of getting footage and videos from people, it was very, very it was very hard work for me. It was very hard for me to go through all of that because it was really a lot. It's very heartbreaking. That period was very, very rough for my mental health, for me, and just being exposed to all of that stuff. So hearing you speak about it, I was like, oh, yeah, I understand. It can be really, really hard to have that constant exposure, and that was actually even what led me to ask this question, because I imagine that it's not an easy thing to constantly be exposed to all these, inhumane things that atrocities have on you. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the work that you do. It's not an easy work, but you're doing it, and thank you for that advice. I think it will really help people who are going into this field so they are aware of what to expect.
I wanted to just add something very quickly because I had that experience, just being in different kinds of cases and issues and things and all of that, at some point, I became very conscious of it. So when I organized this litigation preparatory justice surgery in July, where I said we brought like 50 international participants, people from Namibia, Tanzania, and people are talking about their ancestors whose skulls were scraped out of their heads and taken and beheaded and all sorts of things. I mean, it sounds very far away, but when you're talking to the people, the family members who know that their grandfathers are, buried there, but the call is not there, like it's so personal and it's so real. And you hear all sorts of gruesome examples. I was very intentional to invite remediation experts to that meeting, so that's something that went into programs, like designing the program. So we brought someone who could, in between sessions, just everybody stand up, do some breath work, breathe in, breathe out, stretch, do this, do that, calm yourselves, because it was a 2-day meeting, but people were literally breaking down as they were sharing. And this happens a lot within this space, depending on, the kind of work you're dealing with. So I'm just mentioning that because I've not seen a lot of it happen. In some spaces, I've seen it where people are intentional to create that. And it's important that we rethink the way we design programs and the way we implement programs, even at your small community level. If you're going to have a group of people talk about something deeply personal, deeply hurtful, deeply whatever, it sometimes feels like re-traumatizing for them to go through explaining that. And then for someone else who's listening and has to document, decode, report, or whatever, it could become a form of vicarious trauma where they're taking all the trauma from these people. So I know you said like your podcast is for like early to mid-career professionals, but sometimes they are the ones who are, implementing the program. So just to say, keep an eye out for trying to make the spaces truly safe and just create the intentionality where people can take pauses and it makes a whole lot of difference. It makes a whole lot of difference. We don't want to be carrying traumas from helping people and doing what should be helpful. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Welcome.
So I think I have one more question for you, which is looking back on your career and the paths you've taken. Is there anything you would do differently if you could do it all over again?
Okay. Anything I'll do differently? Yes. Something I'll do differently is publish. I think I said this before. And because I've seen the world of difference it can make, it doesn't need to be a book. It doesn't need to be a big article, even op-ed pieces to set a target that I'm implementing going into the last quarter. But even if I have just one proper op-ed piece, I'll be happy. In fact, take off proper, because I think the perfectionist in me delays to do things that I know I really need to do because I'm just like, it hasn't gotten there yet. And there's something we didn't get into, which is dealing with imposter syndrome, dealing with perfectionism, dealing with, is this good enough? Can I release it yet? Because that's something that keeps a lot of us from making the push we need to push. For instance, for me, I'm just waiting for it has to be proper. Just put it out there, start something. And you may look back 10 years and like, oh, wow, that thing I wrote 10 years ago was, oof. But guess what? You're 10 years better. You would not have that first thing if you don't start. And there's nothing as difficult as editing a blank page. It's easier to edit something where you actually have something than you started. So the advice I'll give myself and the thing I'll do differently is just to write a bit more, share my thoughts on issues a bit more, whether it's op-eds or whatever, just own my voice a bit more and unapologetically, because that would have meant more leverage for me going into consulting, which is what I'm looking to transition more into now. Going into consulting, where you're applying for gigs or bidding for stuff. It's like, okay, let's see your CV, let's see your publications. Like, oh, I have all this program experience. I can bring it to you. But I want to see what you've written about. And I think at any stage whatsoever, you can start, even with LinkedIn. So I've been trying to do this LinkedIn series now. I'm like, we're going to do 21 posts, reflect on the work I've done this year. And yeah, some weeks I get to put out 2 posts, some weeks 0, some weeks 1. But I'm just trying to build the consistency of putting myself out there. Because I think, like I said, for me, what holds me back is this proper? Is this good enough? I'm not ready to put it out there yet. I need to make sure it's like polished. But when is it gonna get polished? So it's releasing myself and giving myself grace to just take that step, one step in front of the other. And ultimately it adds up. When I look backwards, the dots will connect. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm not changing anything else.
Yeah, I mean, that is fair. I think it's important to also recognize things that you would have done differently. And might not necessarily mean that you actually want to go back and, change everything, but it's just a question to, reflect on the lessons that you've learned and everything. But I see that you're making the effort now. And even your LinkedIn series was actually what, was what actually brought you to my mind. So, you're on the right path. And also, I read, I think you published something on reparations, on the gender perspectives reparations. So I actually, went through that research paper. So, you're already making the steps and making the efforts. So you're on the right track. One advice I got from one of my previous bosses, because I have always been this person who is so big on perfectionism, making sure everything's perfect. And one thing she would tell me back then was, do not let perfection be the enemy of good. And that really, really, really stuck with me. Even this podcast, I think I've actually come a long way, because I had to do this like maybe 5 years ago. I think I wouldn't have done it, because I would have sweated all the things, so many details about, maybe I don't have this or maybe I don't have that. But I decided to just, do it, to just into it, because you cannot make something better that does not exist. You've got to make it exist first, then you can make it better. And there
Absolutely.
are lots of people who ship things that are very bad, that are even worse than what we could put out, And so, but it's okay. Another real quote that really helps me with this stuff is to not be afraid to be seen trying, and to not be
Yeah.
afraid to be seen not having it all together, you understand? Because there might be this pressure. I guess somebody is looking at me, everybody's seeing the mistakes that I'm making. But I mean, yes, people care, but also people don't care that much. Yeah, I mean, think about the things that you interact with every day. Yes, you are scrolling and you see something that interests you, and yes, it interests you, but I don't think we are going about it picking every single thing or remembering all of that thing, and you scroll and maybe you forget about it until you see it again. So I think
Yeah.
we really need to give ourselves more grace. Yes, I've given myself more grace, especially with this podcast, because like so many things have gone wrong since I launched this. So way too many things have gone wrong. But I'm like, okay, you know what? It's a journey. It's a journey.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I mean, I would like to launch my first podcast, and maybe it's winning Emmy awards or whatever. But nobody does that. I maybe 1% of people, but nobody actually achieves. The more I grow, the more I'm going to improve. But you can't improve something if you're not in the field doing that thing. If it does not exist, there's nothing to improve. So I hope maybe I've given a little pep talk, to keep you pushing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm hoping to see more of your published work and everything. I'm keeping an eye out for your LinkedIn to see what you're
Aw.
posting and what you're sharing. So
Yeah.
please just keep doing that. Okay, I'll be looking forward to
Yeah.
that. So
Thank you
I've
so
had
much. That's so
you're
thank
welcome.
you. Thank you. I
So
appreciate
I've
it.
had a good chat with you today. And
Yeah.
really, really, really exciting. And I can't wait to publish this video because we've talked about a lot about what it's
Thanks.
like to work in human rights. You've talked about, how to
Mm.
find opportunities, this mentality you need to actually work in this community. We recently
Mhm.
just talked about, how to preserve your mental health when you
Yeah.
are exposed to these atrocities, when you are
Yeah.
exposed to all these things while trying to help people. We
Mhm.
talked about postgrad applications, and how to, give your best to ensure that get the sort
Mm.
of program that you want. And but I think the chief for me having this conversation with you is just getting exposed to your mindset. So I feel that
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing people are going to take away from is how you approach things, and
Yeah.
how you have this goal, you have this. I mean, even though we plan for things and things do not always go as planned, nobody could say that you did not try. Nobody could say that you did not put in the effort required. I mean, yes, there's
Yeah.
always some element of luck involved with everything that we do. But you show up fully, you show up brilliantly. I feel that you
Yeah.
even go the extra mile in showing up because you do not necessarily take no for an answer. So I guess something that I'm mostly going to take for myself personally. Because
Yeah.
sometimes I get my first negative response and I'm like, okay, I just said no, but I think maybe I should push some more. If I really want something, I need to push for it some more. So I've had a really, really, really lovely chat with
Oh,
you
thank you
today.
so much. Same
And I'm
here.
so really grateful that you agreed to come on this podcast. I mean, I know that you've been busy and everything, so I'm really happy that you slapped me into your schedule. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. No. I'm really
Yeah.
grateful. I'm really grateful. Thank you for not my eyes tearing up. Thank you for having me. I mean, I'm really proud of you. Well done for doing this, for putting this together.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank you.
speaking the
Thank you
other day,
so
it's
much.
us reconnecting after how many years since high school? 15 years. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's
15
been
years
15 years.
since high school. And here we are doing adult things. And so, yeah, well done. Well done to you. I mean,
Yeah,
putting this
thank you.
together is
Thank
no
you so
joke.
much.
Even from like the
It's
briefing paper
not.
for it. I'm just like, this is proper. I love it. I love it. Well done. Well
Thank
done.
you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm going to link your LinkedIn where people can find you. I'm going to link it in the show
Yeah.
notes so people can find you directly. I guess
Yeah.
people have extra questions that we're not covered during the sessions. Maybe they could reach out to you or
Yeah.
something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to wrap up with if you enjoyed this episode, please spread the word. Tell us what you liked about it on social media and tag us at What I Do for Work. Use the hashtag WIDFW podcast. So share it with your friends, mentees, share it with serious people and with people who are interested in the law, advocacy, and rights spaces. Also, you can give us a review and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. So thank you all so much for listening. I'll be back soon with another inspiring conversation. So until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building. Bye bye.